Alright, the liar. Once again, did some more lying. Just lie after lie. Alright, so let's understand. My premise here is a simple premise. There's only one piece of evidence for anything called time dilation, and that is radioactive decay slows down when you give radioactive elements velocity. That's the indication. And beyond that, the evidence is non-existent, essentially. And certainly the evidence of any frame change. My argument is that whatever change takes place when there's velocity, it happens inside the thing with the velocity. Nothing in the external world is changed. So if you had a spaceship, and let's make it a round one, hollow in the inside, and you have gravity boots on, and you're inside your spaceship and you're moving half the speed of light. Okay, that away. Okay, get that? Okay. And now you do a light experiment, okay, which means you're going to shine light from one side of the ship to the other. So there's space going through here, of course. The only thing moving is the frame, and you're attached to the frame. And so you're going to do a light experiment where you're going to shoot light across, and you're going to bounce it off a mirror, and then it's going to come back, and you're going to see how long it takes for the light to go across and come back. Alright, now, the distance problem is this mirror is attached to this thing moving half the speed of light. So that is for every this much this thing moves, light will move this much. So yes, light will be going twice as fast, but this thing is going to go substantially fast. And the simple argument I'm making is you can't do this experiment. What's going to happen is the light will leave at the speed of light, the mirror will disappear at half the speed of light, it will be 2 notches away, okay, before the light gets here. And so the light's going to get to a spot over here because the ship's going to move. And so it's going to hit where there's no mirror, over here. And certainly on its trip back, it's going to do the same thing. And so the receiver would have to be way over here. Now, the problem with that is you could put the receiver there ahead of time because you know the experiment's broken, and you could put the mirror here. But then the problem is this distance is you have to make the electricity go this way, and electricity is going to move slower than the speed of light. So your experiment is still fundamentally impossible to do. Now his argument's also that if I take a flashlight, okay, I'm moving in this spaceship at half the speed of light, and if I take a flashlight and I shine it this way, that the light will leave me at the speed of light from my perception. So even though I'm going half the speed of light in the same direction, he's saying this light, I'll actually see the light actually reach someplace very distant, let's say, at the same, well, the wrong, no, you can't do the where it will reach thing, you have to do the where it's progressing. So I'm just saying if the light had a flag at the first photon, I would see that leave at the speed of light from me. And it's clearly not possible. The ship is moving. I'm moving half the speed of light. There's no way the light can go the speed of light. It's going the speed of light, but I'm obviously keeping up with it. I'm going half the speed of light. I'm keeping up with it. So it can't get away from me at the speed of light. It has to get away from me at a much slower speed. So if I was going 99.999% of the speed of light, you could sort of understand that the light would leave the flashlight from my perception just barely getting away. I mean, I'm barely going any slower than it. And that's a fact. And the real point is that none of this is true, because what's really going to happen is that velocity is going to fundamentally foobar matter. Matter can't do this velocity stuff, especially even in empty space, because all the light it's impacting, it's going to keep doubling the frequency of it, at least. Well, I have to figure out the math for the whole frequency argument, but the blue shift of going half the speed of light is going to be so intense that you're going to be bombarded with high energy photons now. Everything's getting energized. So you're not even going to survive visible light. Visible light's going to hurt. It's going to sting in a major way. And then if you hit anything, any particle of matter, the mathematics for the force of the impact is going to be insane. So anyway, all this whole thing is so ludicrous in terms of thinking of matter moving anywhere near these speeds. If it did happen in the universe would be shredded, okay, by these high energy material particles. We couldn't put people out in space because they'd get blown up by grains of sand moving at preposterously high speeds. It's obviously matter doesn't survive high speed. It gets ripped to pieces by it, because the only way it can maintain the velocity, it has to be running an engine inside of it. Okay, it has to be taking force. The electrons are plasmaing force. Okay, they're capturing it and they're plasmaing it through them, and they're doing it in this kind of uneven way. I didn't really want to get into this conversation because it gets a little bit complicated, but you could sort of understand that if you had a connection of electrons and they were imbalanced, that is, they were closer together in one location and further apart in another, that would essentially create what you're looking for, which is a perpetual motion. So they all are doing technically they're just doing a right turn thing. So I'm drawing it circularly just to make it understood that this box is more complicated than just 4 square sides. But the point is they're going to convey the energy in the sense that these balls are doing the real velocity thing. And so it's just by swinging them in a certain way through this plasma that you're always forward heavy. That is, there's always more balls moving this way than there are moving this way. And that's the nature of velocity. So it's just that you get one-sided, which is essentially charged. There's more junk, certain kind of junk, on one side of you than there is on the other side of you, and that means that the plasma is going to flow through you, affecting more matter going one way than affecting going the other way. So you're going to end up getting pushed. So it creates its own river and then puts more paddle wheels, you could say, on one side of the river than on the back side of the river. Because the river always has the force will always move the same. It's going the speed of light, it'll always do that, it can't do anything else. And so all that changes is how many paddles you're putting in the current. So if you put more paddles in the current going this way, you'll collect more energy, more interactions than paddles going the other way. But anyway, I don't want to explain. Look, this gets deep, okay? I mean, this idea that, look, we're a big hunk of matter. All right, so the force is going through us all the time. Tons of this stuff, these tons are flying through us. So gravity's going through us, radio waves, all kinds of stuff's going through us all the time. And what keeps us is the fact that we're polarized. Okay, we have certain collections of polarization. And what's really happening is the arrows are always changing. The fish are always getting knocked out. And all that's staying is the color. So, something going this way, blue, okay, now goes this way, blue. And then it goes that way, blue. And then it goes this way, blue. But they keep changing the actual stuff that you're made out of, but the pattern remains, and that's the important fact. And it happens through a very complex, like I said, charge is the function, charge is the mechanism through which this happens to matter. And the charged field is basically not, is the loose electrons that are associated, that will inevitably be associated with protons. But I don't want to get into that argument either. So I mean, every material atom is going to have a charge field, in the sense it's going to have more proton than it has electrons. It's going to have more mass, quote unquote, more red polarization than blue polarization held. And there'll always be an imbalance, well, close to an imbalance. Maybe the perfect elements don't have this problem, like helium or something. But clearly the ones that do have the imbalance, like lithium, obviously collect a lot of force and expel a lot of force. So anyway, yeah, I don't really, like I said, I don't want to get into that kind of argument here, that detail, because I'll do that on the website. I've done it in previous videos. Each one of these are different subjects, but I just wanted to emphasize the point that, okay, me and Pyrrho, we have a clear distinction here. I'm saying the matter changes. I'm saying that's what the evidence indicates, that matter is affected by velocity. That's the only thing I have to, that's the criteria my theory has to meet. If there's evidence to be met, that's the evidence to meet. Now, his speculation about the fact that light somehow has a variable function, I'm arguing is nonsense. And okay, so anyway, he contradicts his very argument. So earlier in this video, he says the light will leave at the speed of light. Even though I'm going half the speed of light, the light will appear, from my perspective, to be leaving me at the traditional speed of light, even though I'm going half the speed of light. So the light won't look like it's leaving me at the speed of light plus half the speed of light, which would be impossible. I think we both agree. But we won't see it as moving half as fast because I'm moving half as fast. So the two halves won't have to add up. He can have a true perception of the light actually going the speed of light, even though he's moving in the same direction, half the speed of light. And I'm just saying, in my opinion, that's nonsensical. That can't be fixed as a statement. Okay, right here in the video, he changes the story and now says you can tell how fast you're going by shining light at somebody else or something else, and now you'll be able to detect your speed, because it's going to, I don't think he says redshift, but I think he indicates the light will change. And I'm arguing there's no change in the light ever. The light that exits the wall of the ship going half the speed of light is exactly the same photons, exactly the same light as the light leaving a flashlight right here on Earth. Same difference. This light, if I was going half the speed of light, it's the same light. I don't think you can make a flashlight that can go half the speed of light, don't get me wrong. But if I could, and I made photons go out of it, they're going to travel exactly like these are traveling. No different. And I won't be able to see it any other way.
Leaving you a little bit slower. And so you create a device to measure that, and you can see who was moving and who was not moving.
Okay, so you can create a device to see who is moving and who is not moving. I think he says you create a light clock. Let me turn the speed thing off. And turn the volume up. And let's hear what he has to say. I mean, I've played the rest of this crap.
So if you can't tell fundamentally, really can't tell, it doesn't mean you don't have the device, but theoretically in this theory you could not tell, then it means that time and space and mass have to distort so that time is consistent locally.
Right. So consistent locally just means that somehow I can be going half the speed of light in the direction I shine photons, and the photons are still going to leave me at the speed of light, which means they have to be going the speed of light plus half the speed of light. They have to be doing that if they're going to leave me at the speed of light. There's no other way. The light locally has to be going the speed of light plus a half. That's the only way I could see it that way. It's the only way the light could ever get across the ship and hit the mirror. You can't give light momentum. Light's a force traveling in, that's what I mean. Momentum is a function of something that has complexity. Photons don't have complexity. They move in a straight line at a consistent speed. That's what they do. They don't do anything else. They can't have anything called momentum except in the one direction they're moving. They can't do anything in any other direction. There's no combining of force. Yeah, that's probably a good way to say it. I mean, I've emphasized this so many times. That's proven everywhere in all force examples. The forces don't mix. You have to put matter in to mix them. On their own, they can't mix. They don't interact with each other. Yeah, but he kept bringing up the interferometer bullshit again. The only way the interferometer experiment could mean anything is if you believed there was a solid ether, a hard ether, and that you could shove more ether in the way of the light, and therefore the light would slow down because you shoved more ether in front of it. Now clearly I've only emphasized it over and over and over again that I've made this example of head-on collisions, kinetic collisions. A head-on kinetic collision is invisible. It has no meaning. nothing happens. The most dramatic thing happening is the least effective. It looks like nothing happened. One thing went right through the other thing, the other one thing bounced off the other thing, it doesn't really matter. The same outcome. So the most catastrophic force event is invisible. It has no byproduct. It has no observable effect. So clearly you could shove as much of that as you want to in the way, and it wouldn't matter, because it would just go right through it all. Force doesn't affect force. Force doesn't affect force. Light is a force. Gravity doesn't affect it. So we'll get to that, because that's going to be half of this video is me re-emphasizing how disgusting this liar is. Alright, so here he keeps claiming I should go out and find his evidence and be persuaded by it and admit defeat. He doesn't present any evidence. Every evidence he's ever presented has been a lie. So far he's presented evidence that parameciums can acquire knowledge, which they cannot. They can learn individually. Not a fact. Totally debunked. He presented the evidence of a single slit experiment in water that was completely contrived. That is, diffracted waves were created that went through the slit. So it was diffracted before it went into the slit. It was already interference in the water waves before they went into the slit. He called that a valid experiment, demonstrating single slit interference. And now he keeps showing these stupid, preposterously idiotic lensing images as if they're evidence of gravitational lensing. And there's no math in this universe. Einstein would find it mockable. It's preposterous to use his math and say that makes sense, because it can't possibly make sense. It's just disgusting. This guy's a disgusting piece of shit.
In between the two moving.
So again, he has provided no evidence. I'm just saying, look, show me the evidence I have to make my theory comply to. Because all I see for time dilation is demonstrating a relationship between velocity and a degrade in matter. I think I've demonstrated that exists by my theory.
Trains, that's stationary. So the only way you can know is there has to be something stationary.
No, you could know by measuring your speed relative to light.
Well, you just told me earlier in this video that I can't do that. Because if I shine a light forward, it's going to look like it's moving the speed of light. I'm going to look like I'm not moving. You didn't say, no, I can turn the flashlight on and I'll see that the light isn't moving as fast. It's not getting away from me as fast. You didn't say that. You said exactly the opposite. Now you're just contradicting yourself. I can't possibly do that. Now, if you want to argue that somebody else moving the other way could shine a light at me, and I'll see how, well, again, that's not going to be any good, because I can't tell whether I'm redshifting because I'm moving away from him, or I'm redshifting because he's moving away from me. So again, that's not going to help you. So again, your argument now has changed. So your fundamental argument was, you shine the flashlight, the light moves away from me at the speed of light, and now you're saying, no, if you shine the flashlight, you'll see the light doesn't move as fast, and you'll know you're moving. Which one is it? If I shine the light across the spaceship, does the light go? Does the light keep my momentum and go straight and hit the mirror? Or does the light not go? Does the light go straight, but my ship moves and it hits someplace else? Which one is the truth?
In your perception, you have to have a reference. Without a stationary reference, you can't tell who's moving.
The universal grid that you think exists.
No, I don't think it exists. So again, another lie. I'm totally opposed to a fucking universal grid. I'm totally opposed to any notion of some sort of static, dead ether. I've only pointed it out 4 million times. The whole point of me saying, hey, you know what? Ether is a dumb idea because it doesn't do anything. The whole point is whatever force you come up with, whatever your electromagnetic field is or any other kind of field, the point is you got to explain gravity first. And gravity expends a ton of fucking energy. And where the fuck does it come from? Well, it comes from the fucking field, okay? And the field isn't a dead ether. It isn't a dead grid. It's a bunch of shit moving in directions.
You could measure your rate of speed relative to it.
Einstein didn't need Galileo.
So again, relative to a grid, I don't speculate to exist. I'm saying the grid is made out of light, so yes, I can tell my speed by seeing light, and that's going to tell me my speed. How can it possibly do that? As I have only argued over and over again, force can't affect force. Force can only affect matter. So exactly how can I tell how fast the matter's moving, all right, unless I interact with a force, which is going to be a deceleration.
Say it, but he certainly knew that would be.
Because you think light is traveling through that medium.
No, I don't. Again, so another lie. I mean, I don't know. How clear have I made this? I mean, I've only argued about fish. I've only argued, all this stuff. I'm saying polarization, okay, is in a sense moving, but it doesn't have any momentum. So again, it's not moving in any rational sense of the word moving. It's being moved constantly. All right, but that's it. Pattern's being moved. It's being pushed by force. And force doesn't interact with force. It only interacts with the polarization.
Right. And its velocity adds and subtracts to your velocity.
Again, lie some more, all right? I'm just saying that I've never implied that the force ever adds, that the fish ever go faster or slower than the speed of light. I've only emphasized that over and over again. So what can these be called but lies? How do you make this not a lie? I mean, how desperately do I have to plead with you to quit fucking lying about my science, you fucking cunt? Quit putting lies in my mouth, you lying sack of shit. You're just a lying fucking liar.
So you could tell, and a matter of fact, it'd be very easy to tell because you could just fire a laser, in two directions, at right angles, and the color of light would be different.
Again, how so by my theory? Exactly. Why don't you explain how that works by anything I have claimed to exist? You liar.
In the forward direction versus the backward direction.
There's no forward or backward to the fucking light. So anytime you expel a force, there's no such thing. There's straight ahead. That's all it knows. It carries no momentum from anything else. It just does one thing. It moves the speed of light in a straight fucking line. A speed of light distance. A Planck distance in a Planck interval of time. Period. That's all it does, and it does it everywhere in the universe, and it doesn't change for any fucker's frame. It doesn't comply with your wishes that it still be light, even though you're moving half the speed of light. It won't comply. It won't look anything like you think it would look.
Side direction, if you're moving, it would have a different wavelength of light coming out. Well, no, you don't believe that. It would have a different speed.
It can't have a different speed. I've only emphasized that over and over again. And yes, it can change the frequency. And that gets into the redshift argument. So, and that's exactly what I'm saying. Obviously, if the light isn't traveling away from me, if I'm going, look, you can't see the back end of light. So the conversation gets a little bit moot. Okay, I mean, how exactly can I tell how fast the light's leaving me without saying when does it get to a target? And when do I get to a target? And if I measure those two things and the difference between those two things, the difference is going to be this much, not this much.
And so you could measure. Your stationary reference would be the medium that light's traveling through.
Again, to know what speed the light's going, I have to eventually have it hit something. And if I'm having it hit something, the something I have it hit has to be something stationary, for fuck's sake.
The thing that gives light its constant velocity. You believe light has a constant velocity.
Even though you just speculate that I believe otherwise.
Relative to this, whatever it's traveling through.
Yes, no, relative to nothing. Okay, in empty space.
And therefore you could measure the difference between your velocity and light's velocity, and you would have your...
Again, how can I do that? The light's velocity is always... I'm the one arguing the light is always moving the speed of light. So exactly how can I do this calculation if I'm moving without having the light hit something that isn't moving? I mean, the point I made, that there's no way to tell what your velocity is unless you have a reference that's not moving, is a solid argument. Because without it, there's no mechanical way to detect anything.
Absolute speed. So Galileo and Einstein are saying, no, that's not possible. Not just because we don't have the technology. They didn't say, hey, build this thing and get your... No, they said relativity. You literally can't ever find out which is moving and which is at rest, because physically...
Well, again, I would argue that if I was in this spaceship and I did this experiment, it would be conclusive evidence of how I'm moving. So I could just see how badly I missed the mirror is going to tell me how fast I'm going. So in this sense, all you have to do is shoot light sideways to your movement, okay, and figure out how far it doesn't hit perpendicular. It doesn't move straight. And then you've answered your question. By how much you're moved away from the light, you know that's how fast you're going. So yes, in that sense, yeah, you can do it without a solid object to hit. Because you'll know that your moving object is the same thing. It'll tell you the answer. You admit light in one location, the light travels at a straight line, that's a known, and you'll know how far away your mirror moved. So yes, you can figure out how fast you're going with a light clock.
Both statements are equally true.
Was already established.
Just by the miss. Let's see. So, but again, this detecting argument is going to be the problem. You have to detect it. Yeah, so you just put the detector on the other side of the ship. Fuck the mirror. Because the mirror's just going to fuck things up. So yeah, fuck the mirror. And just detect the light when it reaches the other side. And how not perpendicular that line is. It will tell you how fast you're going.
It's a fact. And these other it wasn't like if he is right. Everybody knew that if you stood on a moving object and threw something, the thing you threw was going to move how fast you're going plus what you threw. And the only time that doesn't work is with force, because force can't carry your momentum.
To be true. We checked and it was true.
So again, what did you check that was what was true? Again, I'm saying the only evidence you have is a connection between velocity and changes in material function. What other evidence do you have of any kind of work in time?
You're not just disagreeing with that. You're disagreeing with Galileo's concept that the velocity is truly relative.
Okay, so you're saying it's truly relative. So I didn't see a Galileo quote where he said all velocities are truly relative. That he somehow knew that the baseball doesn't really go 120 miles an hour when it's on a train and then somebody throws it in a direction. And that fundamentally, well, I mean, it is true. The stationary object could be moving, so that's the problem. But I'm just saying, because Galileo pointed the problem out of perception, that you can't perceive without something that is the reference, that he was saying there's absolutely no such thing as velocity. That it's always just some sort of relative thing, and that you can't gain any absolute velocity.
Okay, well, this is getting on like coming towards an hour, so I don't even know if I want to finish this. This is guy, but it's kind of, I said that if he didn't, if he stayed on his...
Oh, fuck you! You don't stay on this subject, you fucking cunt. I mean, I could waste all of your time right here, and I could make analogies to, well, don't you understand that, like wood is made out of trees, and like you can cut trees down and like, saw them and make boards out of them? I mean, I could waste a lot of your time doing the patronizing bullshit that this asshole engages in. I mean, I sit there and overtly in my video say, muons decay slower when they're accelerated by cosmic rays. And then he claims he has to explain that to me. Somehow I denied the fact. Alright, so let's get to the lensing thing. It's somewhere in here. I should have marked down the damn time.
A lot better in those times. Sometimes everything's going way so fast. And I have noticed it has to do with...
Oh, he's talking about his own little brain function.
Exactly the same. And my argument is kind of simple in this respect.
His brain function has something to do with time dilation.
Except for not that if you accelerate the clock. When you accelerate the clock, you're doing a transformation on your rest frame. Your rest frame's not at rest, it's being accelerated, which is also like...
So now, look, I mean, the analogy was simple enough, right? You're moving half the speed of light. There's no rest frame bullshit. There's no anything. You're moving at a consistent speed, half the speed of light. So this wasn't a complex rest frame bullshit equation.
You're being transformed from one rest frame to another. that you have to take into account. Right? All of science was forced to take Einstein's theory into account, not whether...
Whatever. Yeah. The only thing that has to be taken into account is evidence. And again, Einstein's theory has nothing to do with anything extraordinary besides what's already known as facts, which is gravity accelerates matter. There's nothing else Einstein's adding. Einstein's only pointing out that, yes, you have to measure this interaction. There's a complex interaction because every time the Earth moves a tiny bit and every time the Sun moves a tiny bit, it changes your math. And that's what Einstein added, but nothing else.
And the simple explanation for that is that your matter exists in 3 dimensions, and forces like magnetism and gravity and light. These are all forces. The things that move the speed of light are force, and the elements of force, whatever you want to think of them as, waves or quanta, it doesn't, or whatever.
I'll jump ahead here.
Some stretch zone.
Well, there's one point where he says, what are these dimensions you're talking about? I mean, I've only been over that, right? Up, down, forward, back, left, right. That's it. There's no other sense of anything happening is in these blended spheres of dimensionality. And that's it. There's no time dimension. There's no space dimension. There's no other dimensions of any sort. There's only force moving in the 3 known dimensions, and everything else is based on what force does. So that's it. That's the universe. There's no other dimensions.
Rules change. And I'm just simply arguing there's no evidence that a rule change.
And I have to reject something that stood the test of time for 400 years.
He keeps saying 400 years. Again, what evidence did Galileo have that there's no such thing as absolute velocity? And you're even conceding your own argument. You admit there's absolute velocity in the sense that quite obviously you can't move faster than the speed of light by Einstein's own equations. So you know there's a speed limit somehow. So how could that speed limit be relevant if there's no such thing as an absolute?
Okay, I don't feel like doing that.
Oh, come on. Where's the damn lensing image? I should have wrote it down. I thought I did write it down, actually. Let's see. Time. No, it's not at 34.
So now, in your system designed to make perfect common sense, you've got arbitrary dimensionality comments, which I don't... Huh?
All right, arbitrary. So the fact that forward, back is different than up, down, and left and right, that's arbitrary. No, I'm afraid it's not arbitrary. That perpendicular to forward this way is this way and this way. Those 2 planes are perpendicular to this plane.
I only know about the 3-dimensional space mechanics.
Come on, it's got to be here. I don't think it was this far forward.
Wait, totally.
Unfortunately, it doesn't show any images here.
So, like...
So you can't see the moving image. So I can't find it. Oh, so we brought the Morley...
Shifted, whether some of the light's going faster or not. No, it's all going the same speed all the way around the circuit.
Yeah, whatever. That's my argument. Again, so he keeps arguing that Michelson-Morley should be somehow important to me. Michelson-Morley. And again, it doesn't have anything to do with me. It was an ether debunk experiment. They were trying to find the ether, evidence of ether. What does that have to do with what I'm arguing? I'm not arguing for a dead field, idiot. I'm arguing for a kinetic active field. Damn. I want that lensing picture. Alright, well, I'm not going to argue it. I'll just draw it.
Elemental particles.
So anyway, so he puts up on the screen. So this is his debunk again. Another piece of his crap evidence. So it's one of the just absolutely, you know, just for fun kind of image because it makes a smiley face, right? So essentially, it's got these 3 elements, and then it's got that there are obviously of blue tint. So these 3 elements are really white and of bluish tint. And then it's got 2 little red eyes like here. A little nose, and so it's like a little smiley face. Isn't that all very cute? Alright, the thing itself actually looks like a galaxy right here, and it looks like a little bit of something like that over there, and a little bit of two brighter dots over there. Now he claims this is evidence of gravitational lensing. Now, if this is actually a galaxy being seen over here, well, let's not speculate, because that would be inside his lens. That would be a lensed galaxy, so it'd be allowed to be kind of smaller. But anyway, we're talking about huge distances here. Like this might be 100 light years across. This image. And his claim is this is being caused by gravitational lensing. Now, first off, you can see just on the face of it that it's not a round lens. And we know that strong gravity is going to be spherical. So first off, it's not spherical. And you can sort of see by just looking at it that maybe this section is going that way. You know, it's going, it's not on the same plane. So these two are on a similar plane, and this one is on the back end plane. So it's going that way. And so it's moving away. And so you can almost argue that this is a pressure field. So you can almost see this as being something exploded here, and this is the ring, the circles of the pressure field. You know, so you can see if it was one circle, you'd see that these things are all equidistant, but you're just seeing them as not equidistant because of the angle you're looking at it from. This one's in the back, and this one's are forward. This one's more forward, and this one's second forward, and this one's in the back. And they're just residue blown out from an explosion. Now, for them to be lenses, you have to understand that there has to be ultra strong gravity, not only for the thickness, this area, the thickness of this has to be all strong gravity. Besides that, the lens, that means this has to be all strong gravity, and for it to be equal on both sides, it has to mean that the thing is exactly behind it, and that the gravity is exactly equal on both sides. And so you're talking about an incredible amount of gravity at that distance. I mean, 100 light years across. It's huge gravity. And that there's no evidence that this is the blackest spot in space and everything's been sucked into this. This is a black hole doing this. There's no evidence of that. But there's no way to make a lens that tremendously huge, okay, without having a huge, you have to have a huge body, or you have to have a huge, I mean, not an insanely big black hole. Not just crazy big, but I mean just preposterously huge black hole. There's no other way to do it. And if you put matter in there, then you can't see anything. There's no smiley face anymore. It just doesn't make any sense. It's impossible to explain with Einstein mathematics. It's impossible to explain with any true gravitational mathematics how that could possibly be a lens. And the only way you could make it make sense is you'd have to say, I'm going to put fake gravity right here, and a little bit of fake gravity right here, and a little bit of fake gravity right there, and call it dark matter. Now, I'm not going to put it anywhere else, and I'm going to just put very thin lines of it, because if I put any thickness of it, well, then I'd have to explain why nothing's falling into the gravity, because it's really strong gravity. So it's mathematically impossible to defend this as lensing. It's mathematically impossible. I defy anyone to show me how they can mathematically make that lensing. It can't be done. It's impossible. And yet he shows it as a valid, here's my evidence, here's my proof. Yeah. And so you wonder why I'm cynical. You wonder why I doubt you people substantially. Is because your evidence sucks. So again, this is like just pointing out the two slit thing, you know. You could honestly talk about the pattern created in the single slit, or you could be dishonest and show goofy smiley faces. You can show the single slit as it's not with a full pattern, and then just pretend, see, look, there's nothing happening. There's no interference pattern. Just widen the slit a tiny bit, huge interference pattern. So let's just play the game, right? Let's just play, let's distort the evidence, pervert the evidence to make your argument. I'm saying I defy you to explain this smiley face with Einstein gravity mechanics, with Newton mechanics, with any theory of gravity. Explain that. Or fuck you for making the argument that this is evidence. Because it's not evidence, it's shit. Alright, so let's just play a couple more of this and then we'll get out of here. Random spots. We'll have to play. Come on. Come on.
Then we would know that an hour ago we were in the future. We would think that an hour ago we were in the past.
All right, okay, so then he claims that, oh, this was just a thought experiment I was doing, and I totally explained that. There was no explanation in what he did. He said, we have math that demonstrates this is how the universe works, and then he went into his silly forward-backward crap. You don't have math that demonstrates that's possible, and you don't even have backward math. I mean, you can say math is reversible, but it's only reversible if you have the capacity to make things do things that they're not going to probabilistically do. But that's the only way you can do it. If you obey probability, you can't make the math go backwards. You can only make the math go backwards if you disobey probability.
Don't read continuity. And you just
I mean, you have to have a blueprint of where you came from to do the math backwards. If you start with the condition, the finished condition, the math will not take you to the starting point. It'll take you to some other place.
could change, you know, we go in different paths, we would have this sense of continuity, right? So there's
I don't know where all this crap came out of.
Obviously
that's
not.
My video, that's for sure.
well, not everything's about you.
Well, yeah, not everything's about me, right? So he makes a video making all these accusations. I defend myself, and now he says, oh, I'm allowed to go on bizarre tangents. Fuck you.
You know, some other situations. So I think, you know, what you're describing sounds like a random butterfly path.
Right, so he's saying when I argued that there's a field in between the slits in the two-slit experiment, that I was arguing it's random. It's a random butterfly path. Even though I explicitly pointed out electrons move specific ways, the field is rigid, the force, the tension that's tying everything together is rigid. So I point all of that out. It doesn't matter. Now I'm saying it's some sort of arbitrary thing, when that's exactly what he's saying. He's saying it's possible that I shoot a photon through the single slit and it goes to Pluto and flies back again and gets to the target. That's his theory. That's a possibility. That's his shit. And he has the fucking temerity to accuse my physics of being butterflied? Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you.
That would lead to a random exit angle. But we don't see that. We see it very consistent.
Yeah, well, whatever. Why would I argue that? Nowhere in what I've argued is there any room for that randomness. I made that quite explicit. So fuck you and this crap.
It's really happening with time. So we'd have to get clever about our understanding of time.
It's a direction something.
Well, you have to, because you have a problem somehow. I don't have any problem, okay? I'm saying the physics is kind of obvious. You start moving things at high velocities, material things, and they're not going to work right, because especially if they're emanating force. So I'm going to argue that even if you take a magnet into space and you shoot a magnet at half the speed of light, the field energy coming off the magnet is going to get all fucked up in the sense that it's no longer going to be field energy in one place. It's going to be spread out over the length of your speed. So you're going to start breaking any of the field dynamics of the magnetism, because it's not going to be migrating through space from the same emission point. Each emission point is going to be different. So you're basically going to dilute the magnetic field over a huge amount of space.
Now, and somehow I didn't consume.
It's like the photon argument even in space, shooting it across your spaceship. I mean, it has to be just one time. If you try to shoot more than one, like a ray of light, you're totally fucked, because at each point you're moving, that the emitter is moving at each point. So it's going to keep emitting the light in a different location.
The time going forward and the time going backward. Of course, I consume both of them.
I mean, the fun part is if that actually happened, right? If you emit more than one photon as you're moving, the funny part is, right, is the ship is also moving on the other side, and it will basically, I can't collect them. No, I think it's just going to accelerate the problem, not fix it.
In their own direction. I don't know, I'm not saying that is the case. I'm saying we have to be pretty open-minded about it.
All right, I'm not saying it's not the case. He's saying he has evidence of something. He's saying I'm disputing something. And yet he's totally, oh no, I'm not arguing for any of this crap. So one minute he's arguing for it, the next minute he's not arguing for it. I mean, make up your mind. You think it's a hurdle to a new theory or you don't? I'm saying the only evidence of time dilation is the fact that, yes, radioactive decay slows down when you accelerate stuff. And you're arguing that everything slows down. And like I said, by your own argument, you'd have to explain that why all the electronics tied to the electronic clock that's measuring the decay. So the electronics are measuring the decay of the atom, the radioactive material. Somehow they're not slowing down because they're not fucking up the measurement. Because, right, we're supposed to have twice as much dilation then, right? I mean, if all of the hardware, if all the wires are moving electricity too slow and everything's slowing down proportional, then you should have twice as much or 10 times as much, because almost every single element in the electronics is time dilated individually. And so all of those slowing downs are all going to add up. Everything I put in the way of the electricity in the wire, there's going to be a new slowdown at each point.
Well,
Okay, so I'm not saying it is case. I'm saying that it's
I don't see any evidence of it
Brilliant.
in your mind. Anybody even just...
I'm saying blah, 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 blah. Very persuasive.
tells us the truth, and all we need to do is find the right color of arrows to convey what our gut thinks.
Well, again, this, he keeps wanting to just say that I'm doing this because of nothing more than the fact that I had some underlying theory that was in my gut. And no, all I had was skepticism when they started sounding like the Catholic Church. When you start talking about your holy ghosts and your other, you got smoking urns and all this fucking bullshit, yeah, there's reason to suspect. And yeah, I thought the idea of a wave of light being described as a non-thing moving, waving in a non-medium, I thought the idea of that was ludicrous, and I still do. And certainly I thought all the two-slit nonsense of the photon knowing to split in half was really crazy.
Yeah, it's a delay in absolutely every physical process.
Okay, now where did he have evidence of that? Where does he have evidence that every single physical process is equally delayed? Where's the evidence of that? I've seen no evidence that changes in velocity.
So look, the argument would be is that every element, probably you can move every element. And every element's going to be affected by the movement differently. I think it would be kind of idiotic to say all atoms are equally fragile and all of them will be affected by velocity exactly the same way. I think that would be a silly thing to think. And I think it would be kind of obvious to think that the radioactive ones, which are the heaviest and the most complex, would probably be the ones that would be most overtly affected.
Going somewhere and...
Well, for example, just the atomic clock experiment where they put...
All right, so he did it again, right? I mean, you can't miss the fact that I've already talked about the atomic clocks. I'm saying there's no other evidence. And then it goes right back to the same evidence. It's going to repeat the same shit all over again. We've already been there and done that like 4 times in just these videos. 4 fucking times. And how many times do I have to say, I'm not disputing that? And you're going to keep arguing to me like I'm not paying attention to your fucking radioactive decay argument. No, I'm saying that's the evidence we have. What's your other evidence?
Atomic clock in orbit long enough that they would be able to measure the change in the time of the 2 clocks. An atomic clock is...
yeah, and then he does this argument with velocity. It was kind of funny. He says, well, what if we put one in one plane going one way and one in a plane going the other way, and then we decelerate one of them to match their speeds, and we find out the clocks match again. And my argument to that is kind of obvious, right? Because I'm saying that any state change is going to be costly in terms of distance traveled, in the sense of the amount of acceleration and deceleration and the extent of force having to move. And so my argument is completely consistent with that. Yes, whatever one has to do the extra thing, the extra change, is the one that's going to be affected more. Yes, quite obviously.
Not just an atom flying in space. It's a lot of machinery to...
Right, so now he's just defeating his own argument. So before So now he's going to argue that all the machinery of the atomic clock somehow is working fine. That's his argument here, right? And that's completely non-intuitive to his previous, just a sentence ago, where he's arguing that everything time dilates at exactly the same rate. So why isn't the hardware that's measuring the radioactive decay also having a problem measuring the decay?
Turn the vibrations of the atom into, you know, a readout. Tick, 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 tick. Right? And if it's only atomic decay and only, you know, those things that are changing, right, then the rest of that apparatus would get out of sync with the clock. That doesn't happen.
Right. So now he just said it doesn't happen. So just a minute ago he was saying everything time dilates. And now he's saying, no, the hardware doesn't get affected, and only the radioactive element is affected. So he just contradicted himself entirely.
So in every single...
Yeah, so fuck it. I mean, it's just, he has no discipline in these arguments. He takes no responsibility for the accusations he makes, and he puts nothing, like, again, well, he does put something on the line again. I will just go with the lensing argument. This is another one of his. This is proof of gravity lensing. The great smiley face. That's 100 billion light years across, and constitutes the most massive thing in the universe. Somehow we don't know that, though.
Is a little more grounded in reality. Well, we disagree with that. We think that the evidence that's in play in the scientific method is...
Well, whatever. Though your whole method is apparently lie, and then lie some more. So I'm just saying that every time I look for any of your scientific method, any of this fucking integrity in science, I'm not finding any. Instead, what I'm finding is every one of you will just propagandize on subjects and claim you have evidence of something, and your evidence sucks. So every time I look at your evidence, it sucks. So why don't you show me hard evidence of any of this stuff? I'm saying the only thing we have hard evidence of is that velocity affects nuclear decay of radioactive elements. What else do you have? Yeah, fuck you. Alright, enough of this shit.